Good evening and welcome to Speakers Corner UK, where we are back for another review. Unfortunately, my co-host is missing in action at the moment. He did say he was stepping away for a little while. It's been a good while now, so I hope all is well. I have messaged him without response at the moment. But without keeping any of you guys and girls waiting, I thought we'd get started right now, and hopefully he will be able to join me and, as always, give his input when he's available. So with that said, let's start this particular review. So I'm going to share screen here, bring up the correct tab, and start this particular review. So I'm going to share screen here. Let me just share. I shared the wrong screen there. That wasn't helpful. Share screen. Let me try that again. Chrome tab. Where is it? There we go. That's the right one I'm looking for. Hopefully that's the right one. There we go. That's better. Okay, so this is a video that's older. It was posted in 2020, but this channel has old as gold. So they just repost their videos for extra views, presumably. And so this was, I presume, recorded sometime before August 5th, 2020. And so in this video, this is Darren Redbeard Hamza. He's a Muslim in Speaker's Corner. This is Jordan, who at the time was not a Muslim. And so we're going to listen to this review and give some feedback here. And Hamza is going to go through, why somebody ought to consider Islam to be the truth. And as I say, if Stops joins us, obviously he can come in and we'll look to add his input along with mine. But with that said, let's get started.
Other than Allah, the creator of everything. Yeah? That's the first proposition. Do you accept that proposition?
Yeah, I believe in a creator.
Yeah. See, belief in a creator is one thing. Believing you should submit and surrender to that creator and follow his guidance and will is another. All right? So I always say when someone says I believe in God, I say, well, the devil also believes in God. So believing something exists is not the same thing. Yeah? God doesn't care whether you believe he exists, whether you follow his guidance. Right?
Okay, well, it is true that there's two separate things. One is believing God exists, and then another is, believing that he's good or merciful or whatever the case is and is worthy of worship. Because you could have some sort of creator being that is a moral monster. And I would suggest that the Abrahamic gods certainly qualify, in my view, as not being omnibenevolent or all merciful by any stretch of the imagination. So yes, that is true. But God, of course, does care whether you think he's true. So there he's mistaken. It's not a case that God doesn't care whether you believe it's true. He only cares whether you worship him. Well, obviously, in order to worship him, you've got to believe that he's true and that he's worthy of worship. So there's two criteria that need to be met there.
All right. Yeah. So when I say about the only thing worthy of surrender, submittance, and worship, does it mean that there's nothing else? So I wouldn't turn to a man or a statue or an object and think this is worthy of my praise, this is going to help me, this is going to benefit me?
Well, I guess the question is, if I were Jordan, I'd say, okay, well, why do you worship God? What benefit do you get out of that? Because anybody can claim benefit, right? They could worship anything, right? Something invisible, some other version of a God, whatever the case is, and claim some sort of pragmatic benefit from that. But that's very different to A, believing it's true, and B, believing that it's worthy of worship. So what's the argument that you wouldn't worship anything else but this God? Why is this God, A, true, and B, worthy of worship? That's what I would be asking at this stage. But I don't think Jordan does much sort of critique. It's more a case for him listening and Hamza doing all the talking.
I truly, honestly believe the only thing that will benefit me in the long term, as well as the short term, is that creator that you say you believe in. I don't think nothing else can challenge that.
Okay, but why? Again, my question is here. So this is maybe a lesson for Jordan to think a little bit more critically. Why does it benefit you? Why ought it benefit other people? Because clearly other people have either been Muslim and deconverted and not seen the benefit, or people like myself and others have investigate this to whatever degree we have, and we don't see a benefit. A, we don't think it's true, but even if it was, I would, it would be like waking up in North Korea, the celestial version of North Korea. I would be devastated to find out that I actually do exist in this reality that Allah has created. That would be devastating. And even if I got to heaven, I've been saying this recently, I would never be at peace. All those people that have been condemned to hell, even if it was Hamza, let's say, in fact, it's the opposite way around to what it is now, which is, the test, this supposed test if this Allah existed, is a test of credulity, and I'm likely to pass the test because I've noticed that this is a test to test whether you can actually think critically, and people like Hamza aren't doing that. And so if I did in fact get to heaven and he went to hell for failing the test and not engaging his brain, then I wouldn't be peaceful about it, in the sense of like I just live there knowing that even, this guy, or indeed anybody else, is burning in heaven because they didn't believe in God. So for me, if this existed, I'd want annihilation, because heaven wouldn't be as peaceful and blissful as I would imagine, especially if family or friends or indeed any other innocent person or person that just wasn't thinking clearly enough was condemned simply for that.
Right. So that's the first proposition. Now, to be honest with you, if someone accepts the existence of a creator, that's an easy proposition to accept. Because if you imagine the criteria this creator must possess, must be all-powerful, all-knowing, all of these things.
No, that's not true. Okay, the fact that this reality exists doesn't lend itself to omni properties. In other words, maximally powerful, maximally knowledgeable, or whatever the case is. All that's required for this universe is a creator with enough power to create the universe. That's it. Everything else is an extra step, and you would have to then give an argument why you believe that's the case, other than just inferring it or just saying, I take it to be the case, or saying, well, the book says so. None of that is compelling for somebody outside. So all we can say is if we could demonstrate a creator, it's just powerful enough to create this universe. It doesn't require omni properties. So he's mistaken there, or at least he hasn't given an argument why we ought to accept that.
So, of course, that would be the thing that you would follow guidance from, especially something that's all-knowing. All right.
Okay, but why would you follow guidance? Even if it was all-powerful and all-knowledgeable, why would you follow guidance? Because you could have an all-powerful or all-knowledgeable entity that had some evil or malevolent intent. Would you follow that guidance? Presumably not. How would you establish the difference? So you wouldn't just automatically follow it because it was powerful. How could you even establish that it was all powerful? How would you do that? You could ask it any questions, but it just needs to be powerful or knowledgeable enough to answer any questions that you might throw at it. That doesn't mean that it knows all things. And so even if it did, why would you follow it just because of that? You have to establish that it's somehow worth following, and then you need some criteria for what that is. What is my criteria to say it's worth following? And omniscience or omnipotence isn't a criteria in and of itself.
I'm pretty sure you accept that proposition. Right. The second proposition is that Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, is a messenger of this creator. Yeah. So you accept that this man Muhammad was sent by this creator, and everything that this Muhammad, peace be upon him, is saying is coming from the creator you say you believe in. Okay. So this is the second proposition. It's a tougher proposition.
So that's a proposition where currently I haven't looked into it enough.
Right. I can give you a 5-minute guide to it. It's very simple. Yeah, you can go away and contemplate and reflect upon. No worries.
Okay, so he's now going to go into his well-worn script of, the idea about Muhammad. Was he crazy, delusional? Was he a liar, or did he tell the truth? And that's kind of the crux of this sort of thing. And this is obviously part of what we want to critique. I think Stops is hopefully going to join us now. I just see a message here, so hopefully he will join us. We're getting to the main sort of part here. So that was all the lead up, as somebody put here, I think quite rightly. Jordan doesn't even challenge Hamza. I think at this stage, he wasn't up for doing any of that sort of challenge, and so he was just listening in here. But I would have been asking a lot of questions here. So I guess that's the difference here. And good evenings to Stop Spamming. Just joined us at the perfect time, sir. We just had a little start, but we're getting to the main part now, I would say. So even though you've made it a little bit later, your timing is excellent. How are you? Are you okay? All good? Your side?
Hello. Well, yes, I'm okay. I hope everybody else is. Welcome to a wonderful Tuesday just after Easter.
Indeed. So we're only 2 minutes in, Stop, so you haven't missed much. It's just kind of the starting points here where Hamza's making a few claims, but nothing particularly serious. And at this point now, we're going to get into, the well-worn script about Muhammad and was he, a liar, delusional, crazy, or indeed telling the truth. And let's see, Jordan's response and, the response that or the quick fire version. So we're at 2 minutes 17. Let's see how long, because he says it's a 5-minute version. Let's see how long it actually takes him. And this is, of course, with Jordan, who isn't asking a lot of questions. If this was you and I, well, I mean, I'm not sure he'd get past the first point, or it would take him half an hour to do so. We just probably lightly wouldn't accept it. So let's see how long it takes for him to get through this whole thing.
What is the point here? What is Hamza trying to do?
Well, I think he's trying to convince Jordan that, because just before you came, he said that it's one thing to accept that a God exists. There's another to worship him. And that's true. There's one thing is accepting, the other is it worthy of worship?
Correct. Yeah.
And so what he's trying to do is, because Jordan has admitted just prior to this that he does believe in a God. So I think the point here is Hamza to go, hey, but this guy came with the last message. And if he came with the last message and it's true, then you ought to believe it. So you need to go with this version of a God, not whatever kind of version of a God you seem to. But he didn't ask him which version of a God he believes in. So he just said, yeah, I believe in God.
Okay.
But I mean, that doesn't say very much. And in answer to this particular question here, the point of this is to review these and to get people, hopefully, learn something ourselves, and to get people to think critically, something that Jordan doesn't do at all here. So Hamza is able to almost do almost like a preaching sermon here with very little pushback against these ideas. Hey, why do you believe that? What's the argument for that? And so hopefully people watch this, and if they were to engage, they're going to ask some questions, not just stand there kind of taking this all in and not asking any questions. I mean, to me, there's not a lot of critical thinking and what's the word? Inquiry going on here. It's more a case of one person listening and the other person talking.
Maybe this is actually referring to what is happening in the park there. Because what's the point of this in the video is to convince people of the existence of this favorite God of his and the necessity of worshipping this one particular God. So that's the point of the video that we are looking at, I think.
Yeah, correct. All right, so here we go straight into this part of it right now.
Okay. What is the claim? Okay. The claim is that Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, is a messenger of God. Yeah. What is the counterclaim? God doesn't exist, so he can't be a messenger of God. First thing. Second thing, he's a liar, creating his own religion to benefit himself. Third claim, counterclaim, he's a madman, he's crazy, he's delusional, he thinks he's being taught by an angel when it's just all in his head. It's a schizo. Fourth counterclaim. And this counterclaim, the fourth one, only comes from whom? Christians. It was Satan. It was father of lies, imitated an angel, pretended to be an angel, and Muhammad fell for it. Okay. So you have a claim he's a messenger of God, and the counterclaims are what? He's a liar, he's a madman who is deceived, or there is no God, and he can't be a messenger of God, which would include liar or whatever. All right.
What about other possibilities?
Yeah, I think obviously the one that he's missing out, at least one for me, is that he's simply mistaken.
Exactly.
That's all we need, and that's the hardest for him. And surprisingly enough, that's the one that he omits. And I'm sure he's heard this before as well. So I'm still surprised that he still doesn't include this one. Probably because it's the hardest one to refute. So leave out that particular one and include only ones that he thinks are easier to refute. And he's got a well-worn script on how he does this, and we're going to see that now. And a spoiler, it's going to be assertions. What we don't see, of course, is the evidence for that.
Have you heard me quote this before?
Yes.
When you eliminate what's impossible, what is left, no matter how improbable, has to be the truth. Because
okay, so this is commonly called the Holmesian fallacy. If you eliminate everything that's quote unquote possible, whatever you're left with, however improbable, must be the truth. And this was something that was obviously, dubbed by the author of Sherlock Holmes.
Doyle.
What's his
Conan
name?
Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The problem with this is, of course, as probably you all see, is how can you establish that you have in fact thought of, or that you've eliminated everything else that is possible? That's the problem. We're fallible human beings. One can always come up with a scenario that somebody else hasn't thought about. So this idea of doing that, what you could say possibly, which is a weaker claim, is that, hey, if you eliminate what we think is reasonable at this moment in time, what we're left with, if it's the only thing that we can come up with as human beings, then it's possibly reasonable to accept that. But you can hear by that language, even that is a lot softer claim than that. So, and it's not the claim that he's making, but this claim itself, all we have to do is, how do you establish it? And somebody like him will say, well, can you give me any other solutions? It's not my job to do that. All I have to do is say, can you get rid of any possible other option It's not for me to bring up another option. It's for you, because you made the strong claim, to demonstrate that you have thought of, or it's not possible to come up with another solution.
And we can see the fallacy at work here, I think, because this is exactly what he's doing. And I like the way that this is presented, that if you say, well, the solution could be A, could be B, could be C, and what we see here is that it's not A, it's not B, it's not C, so it must be D. Well, if you are looking at a limited set of A, B, C, D, then this is correct. But there could be E, F, G, and H. And this is exactly what we see here, because he says, well, it's none of the things that I have given you, so it must be this one. But he hasn't given you all the options that are available. And this is exactly the problem with the Holmesian fallacy.
Yeah.
Because we believe in this life of the concept of the absolute truth, the absolute reality. And by that,
Whoa, okay. So I think there's a confusion here between epistemology and ontology. Ontology is the state of the world. I think we can all agree that there's something going on out there in the world, external to us, very likely the case. The other is our ability to know that, our ability to investigate in what's called epistemology, how to find out about what is going on out there. And if you're going to make claims about absolute truth is in relation to something outside. It's true that X exists, for example. But to make an absolute statement like that, I think you now need to provide an argument. There are a few presuppositionalists who try this. I'm somewhat familiar with that line of thinking. I don't think he could substantiate this at all. And I said, whoa, you just said absolute truth. Can you demonstrate that you can, in fact, acquire absolute truth? And then, I think he wouldn't be able to do that at all. So I think maybe a slip of the tongue, maybe, if we're charitable, maybe he meant, I think it's really, really true or whatever, but absolute truth, I think, is beyond his ability, unless he has some other epistemology that I'm unaware of, to, in fact, ascertain, especially that of an all-knowing being. Because even if an all-knowing being wanted to communicate with him personally, this is the argument I've thought about quite a lot, and he could never be sure that he has, in fact, had communication. If that being spoke to him or communicated with him telepathically or whatever the case is, perfectly. So if you had a perfect sender and a perfect message, but it hits an imperfect receiver, there's always going to be some level of skepticism that the receiver, A, received it perfectly, and B, can remember everything they've received. So you need some sort of omniscience or some sort of infallibility or something in order to make that claim. Because even after you've received it, you could never guarantee that that what you received was in fact the perfect message, because you're a fallible human being.
there are some people who claim the Earth is flat. There are some people called the Flat Earth Society, right? I shall use a different example. There are some people who believe man landed on the moon. And there are other people who challenge the idea that man landed on the moon, saying, oh, there was cameras, there was mirror, there was no wind on the moon, or whatever. So the reality is this: either man did land on the moon or he didn't. Whether you know that reality is another story, but it can only be one or the other. So if man didn't land on the moon, then he didn't land on the moon. You understand? If you claim he landed on the moon, you can believe that. If he didn't, but he has to be one or the other. All right.
Yeah, well, obviously that's the case. So that is a true dichotomy. But then again, we've got evidence, right? And you'd have some criteria that either falsifies or confirms your hypothesis. I, at one stage many years ago when I was younger and not thinking as much as I do perhaps now, and I've still got a long way to go, of course, thought that maybe we didn't go to the moon. And I looked at all of these things and I wasn't sure. I'm not an expert. But then I asked myself an important question. I said, what would it take for me to accept that man landed on the moon? And I said to me, if they could photograph the lunar lander that's on the moon itself, maybe with the tracks of one of the cars or whatever the case is, something that man left on the moon, if they could photograph that clear enough, I would accept we went to the moon. And what do you know? Of course, they've done that in the early 2000s, if not before, but certainly with some satellites that have mapped the entire surface of the moon, and they did that in the early 2000s. So for me, my criteria has been met. Somebody else might have a different criteria, but have a criteria.
I'm more strict.
Mm-hmm. Yours is stricter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, has your criteria been met, or are you still undecided on it?
Undecided.
Okay, so you're undecided on that. Okay. But at least there's something out there. We have a criteria. So, but it is true that it's a dichotomy. Either man landed on the moon or he didn't. That's true, right? But let's see if that's in any way relevant, because he's making an analogy. He first
exactly. This is that's why I was.
And now he's doing the moon one. How does this map onto what he's actually trying to say?
Right. So once we have that concept, we can apply this now to what we're saying. So either Muhammad is a messenger of God, or he's a liar, or he's a deceiver.
Whoa, no. Either
That's
Muhammad.
exactly the problem.
There you go. Right now, so now the analogy breaks down, because now he's giving, it's not a true dichotomy. So the true dichotomy would be either Muhammad got a message from God or he didn't. That's the dichotomy that would be in line with his analogy. And that's why when Muslims give analogies, 99 times out of 100 in my anecdotal experience of speaking to hundreds of Muslims, they always get it wrong. It's disanalogous. An analogy normally for me is something you give somebody if they're having difficulty understanding something. Don't give me an analogy unless I ask for it, because otherwise you're going to waste my time and yours, and now I have to correct your analogy. Just don't do it. Muslims, if you're listening, don't give analogies unless somebody asks for it or they don't understand.
Or he's a madman, or he's deceived by the devil.
When you say messenger of God, because Moses and Jesus are also messengers.
Yeah, cool. All right. So let me add the phrase last and final.
An extra special.
Last and final. Last messenger. The only messenger of God that claimed to come for all of mankind. No other messenger did that. Jesus didn't claim to come for all of mankind. Moses didn't make that claim. But the Quran makes that claim about Muhammad. And if you look at his actions, he sent a delegation to Rome, Persia, and Egypt, calling them to worship the one God. Now this.
Well, you make it sound like he invited them. I don't quite remember it that way. Stops, do you?
No,
it wasn't
I
like
also
a
don't
friendly,
remember.
hey, would you like to join me? I mean, I've got the truth. You guys can join me or not, no problems. But, feel free to come and join me and I'll tell you all about it. I don't think it was quite like that. That's the impression he wants to give here.
Well, number one, Jesus never said he came for all mankind. Well, I beg to differ, because Jesus was, if I remember correctly, sent to this planet for all mankind so that the sins may be forgiven, and he gave his life for the sins of everybody on earth, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's a silly concept, but that's, I think, the message that we're supposed to get. The way that this Hamza guy says it now, says, well, he didn't, because it's not explicitly stated in the Bible, I have been sent for every single human being. Now, with Muhammad, we have a very funny situation. He goes and tells everybody, listen, I'm going to conquer you and I'm going to vanquish you unless you come and you join me. Because these are always the three options that somebody is given. You either submit, you pay, or you leave. And that's it. And this is the same thing as saying there's no compulsion in religion, and then the Quran tells you hundreds of times that you're going to go to hell if you don't do what exactly you're being told to do. So the whole argument, the way that it is built up, is completely wrong.
Yeah, I think they'll try and point at the Bible and look for a Bible verse that says something about Jesus came, for his people and not other people. But again, the Christians can argue that. I think, there's Christians like Bob the Builder and many others that will bring some other verses that claim that Jesus did in fact come for everybody. I mean, that's not our, we haven't got a dog in that fight, so to speak. We can just look at it and examine it. But this claim that he came for all of mankind and he sent out emissaries, almost like invitations. That's not the way I remember it being done in any case. It wasn't as if it was this friendly thing of, hey, I'm inviting you to this, but no problem if not, right? This was kind of a threat. You accept this or I'm coming to invade you guys. It wasn't a case of, just a, go on.
And there's a much, much, much bigger problem. And that is nobody today has been invited by Muhammad. Nobody in the last 1,000 years has been invited by Muhammad. So the claim that he has been brought for all people was only valid for like maybe 100 people that he was directly influencing 700 years ago, if he existed in flesh, or no, in the flesh, sorry, or as a real person. Now, you cannot say that some guy 1,000 years ago was sent for all mankind. Now, I never got a messenger. I never got anybody telling me anything about the Quran or about Islam that would be able to serve as a message from a God, because everything that somebody comes with today, I can refute and show that it is actually incorrect. It is wrong, factually incorrect. So this whole story, Muhammad came for all mankind, is absolute nonsense. And this is the biggest problem that they have, because he has not been sent to anybody. There has not been another messenger or prophet or anything in the last 1,000 years. So this is
but I think what
nonsense.
they're going to say is that the message was sent. So Muhammad was just the messenger. The message was sent. But even then, right, if that were the case, it's in a language that most of the population can't understand. It's been translated, and then when you critique that, Muslims want to say, well, the translation isn't great, but it also hasn't reached all of mankind everywhere across the earth anyway. And we could easily imagine God being able to send it if he in fact sent a messenger. All these 124,000 messages that supposedly came before Muhammad, we just don't have record of any of these sort of things, and neither do Muslims, embarrassingly enough. But that's not something that they will trumpet or talk much about. But certainly he hasn't reached everybody, and his message hasn't reached everybody. But hey, maybe this is a prediction that'll happen again in the future at some point, or maybe this is just the intention. Well, if it is, and we've had 1,400 years, God is pretty poor at fulfilling his intention. How long does it take for him to fulfill this intention? How long could it take if he wanted to do it? Virtually instantaneously. So it is a bit embarrassing that it takes so long for him to, quote unquote, send a message to all mankind. Maybe this is in the future, and all the people that are missing out in the meantime. What do you say about those people?
And Rob, I agree with you in principle, but the thing is that it actually really says that Muhammad is the only messenger and prophet that was sent for all the people. So this is a literal claim. It really says you need to believe that this guy Muhammad was sent to you personally, not because, yes, the message, I agree, we have the Quran, but it actually says he is the messenger. And
that would be impossible.
This is the funny thing.
This is obviously if he dies, yeah. But then again, we'd like to see the verses, and what do the verses actually say, and what are people inferring, and why is their inference, if it isn't perfectly straightforward, why is the inference better than ours or anybody else's for that matter? And this is obviously the ongoing problem with the Quran.
But it also says, and this is the silly thing, you are not allowed to marry Muhammad's wives. I mean, what is the value of that statement today? It's not. So this doesn't make sense. So this whole area of Muhammad, the way that he is positioned, is for a very limited time frame. This is what we see in the hadith when he says, well, this boy who is sitting next to us, he will not die before the last day or day of judgment will happen, the eschatology story. And this is why they actually believed it was about to happen. And this is why they went and they just put Muhammad there for a very, very short time period. And that's it. So none of this actually came true.
Now, this is evidence that he's calling Egyptians and Persians and Romans who don't believe in, you understand? If you look at Jesus, go ye not to the Gentile, enter not the city of the Samaritan, I have not been sent but to the lost of Israel. You watch Jesus preaching only to Jews and such. So when we say he's the last and final messenger, he was the only messenger sent to the whole world, but he was the last and final messenger. All right. So let's use Sherlock Holmes now. Let's eliminate what could be impossible. All right. When we say impossible, we can't prove it's impossible, but our rationale will tell us. All right.
Well, let's all use our rationale together now, and let's see if you can in fact knock these down as easy as you claim. Right? Let's see what happens here.
Let's start with the easiest one to get rid of. It's the devil. So the devil pretends to be an angel. So he did have a supernatural experience in the cave, but this supernatural experience wasn't what he thought it was. It was a devil imitating an angel to deceive Muhammad, so he was going to deceive the people. Okay.
This experience you're talking about the Quran, yeah? The revelation.
The revelation of the Quran, the initial revelation in the cave, because obviously the whole of the Quran starts from the revelation in the cave. So either in that cave, an angel came, a demon came, nobody came, and if nobody came, he lied about somebody coming, or he didn't lie, he was delusional.
Yeah. He wanted to say mistaken there. It's like I was listening. Because I remember watching this, and at that moment in time, if I go back there, I mean, you might not catch it. Let me just see if I play this back. Just listen to see if you hear it here.
And if nobody came, he lied about somebody coming, or he didn't lie, he was delusional.
Do you see?
Yeah.
Delusional. Yeah. He was going to say mistaken, and then he stopped himself and said delusional instead, right? Because that is the most reasonable one, but he eliminates that and uses the word delusional, right? Which has a higher burden of proof for the person who takes that claim on than the mistaken claim. So interesting that he stopped himself saying it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Because then the Quran took 23 years to come. All right. But this is the origination. So if the lie started there, we'll see if the lie started there. If the madness started there, we'll see if the madness started there. If the demonic deception started there, we'll see if the demonic deception there. Or if the angel came and visited him there, we'll see that also. Yeah? Because we're going to eliminate them one by one. All right. And I can do this quickly. Don't worry. It's not going to be a long time.
Okay. All right. So we can do it quickly. He did say 5 minutes at about, I think it was 2 minutes and 50 odd seconds. So we're about just under 4 minutes in. So we'll see how quick this is. Right, we're about 6 minutes in.
Let's get rid of the devil. All right, the only people who believe a devil came to Muhammad is whom? Christians.
No, I mean, I could
Yeah.
postulate that. I don't have to believe the devil. I could just say, well, okay, if there is something, and what is the devil anyway? Some other being. An atheist could still believe in ghosts and stuff like that, right? Something like that. What we don't believe is a supernatural creator. But if there was a ghost or there was, some sort of spirit, whatever that might be, I'm not sure what that is. I'm open to the possibility. And if that thing can somehow communicate with us in some way, I'm open to it. We just need to demonstrate it's true. So I wouldn't suggest that it's impossible that something happened, that something that non-human communicated with him. I mean, could be an alien, could be whatever, right? So it's not exclusively the Christians. But I will, maybe I'll make this argument next time, right? Because then he won't be able to use this excuse that he's going to use now, because he thinks it's only Christians. So I'm going to appeal to their Bible and just wipe this out quick. No, not necessary.
No one else makes that claim. Atheists will never make that claim. They don't believe in the devil. Okay, so let's deal with that claim. According to the Bible, according to what Christians believe in the Bible, when Jesus speaks, he says Satan cannot oppose himself. A house that is divided cannot stand. So,
okay, so let's just think about this. Jesus says that Satan can't oppose himself. What does oppose himself actually mean? What does that mean? What does that actually see? If I was there now, even though if I'm not a Christian, I'm going to go, what do you mean it doesn't oppose itself? What do you think that means? Because Satan, of course, if he's an evil one, he can do things for whatever, quote unquote, evil goal, or in his mind, a good goal, or just a goal. He can do anything. So, or presumably close to anything. So what does it mean to say that he can't oppose himself? What, he can't be God? Okay, well, fine. That's what you could say. He can't be, an all good God. He can't be what he isn't, but so what? How do you establish that's the case?
So Jesus, when he's accused of using a devil, pretending to exorcise demons, when in fact it's a demon doing it, and he's accused of that by the Jews, Jesus clearly says Satan cannot oppose himself. Right? So according to Jesus,
I wasn't expecting you to use the Bible to back up your...
No, because the Christians are making this argument,
Yeah.
so I'm going to refute them with their book. It's the easiest way to do it. So a Christian comes with that argument, and according to the Bible, Jesus cannot oppose himself. The Quran opposes, Satan cannot oppose himself. The Quran opposes Satan, curses Satan, warns you of Satan, tells you to seek refuge from Satan. So according to the teachings of Jesus in the Bible, Satan cannot be the author of the Quran because the Quran opposes Satan.
Okay, well, that was the... Go on. Yeah, you go first.
No. I'm just flabbergasted because I have no idea what he just said. For me, this was a contradiction what he just said.
Okay, so what he thinks is because the Bible apparently claims that Jesus said that Satan can't oppose himself, whatever that's supposed to mean, he thinks what that means is if the Quran says, that Satan is the bad one and it has all these disparaging things and Satan's not the true God or whatever the case is, then it can't be Satan authoring this Quran because that would be opposing himself. But I would dispute that. Because all that needs to happen is because Satan, it will make it more believable. So he's not opposing himself. In fact, one could speculate that he's moving towards his goal. His goal is to confuse people, or confuse people like Darren at least, or Hamza, for example. And you and I can see through that. But he says, what's the term in there? It's I'm not the real God, but all the time he's a liar. He's the person who's telling the lies. So he's not in fact opposing himself. He's in line with his own goal, which is to get people to believe that he's God. And how do you do that? By making up stories against yourself to make yourself seem more believable. And so you and I can see through that. So I do not agree. But to get that across to Hamza, I think would be very difficult. Maybe I need to think of a better way to do that. I think you probably can see it, and maybe you can articulate it differently or better than I have.
Well, for me, it's a contradiction. What he is saying is, I would go to the Christians and say, well, Satan can't do it because Satan can't contradict himself. This house divided cannot stand. So, but in actual fact, if you were to go and plug in the devil in the position of Gabriel, and then as a consequence have the Quran coming from the devil, it would make perfect sense. So he is contradicting himself by saying, well, it can't be from the devil, because if the devil would do this, it wouldn't be able to do that. Well, that is exactly the point of the devil. That is exactly the point why you don't know whether it is a god or whether it is a devil. I don't understand why he even thinks like that.
Yeah, because he's confused about that, right? He thinks that the devil can't say something against itself because then it would be opposing itself. No, that's exactly what a mischievous or malevolent entity would do. It would say something against itself to throw you off the scent, because its entire purpose is to throw you off the scent. And so it's in line with it's actually in line with its goal, which is to deceive you. How do you deceive somebody? By using any means you can to throw them off the scent. So no, even if I'm not a Christian, this argument still doesn't work. But if as a Christian, they're going to push back against it as well. And maybe with the same argument, maybe with something else, I don't know. So even this doesn't work. But I can still use this as a hypothetical. I don't need to believe it to suggest that it's possible, because I could be mistaken about my entire belief about God or spirits or whatever the case is. So it's not the case that atheists won't do it. We generally don't do that, but I could do it. And I could say, well, okay, how do you demonstrate it's not? And if you bring this argument to me, even without the Bible, as I think we've just shown, this just doesn't work at all.
I would call this a viable option, a model.
Say again.
I would call this a viable option, just one model of the many possibilities.
Yeah.
Simple. So we can dismiss that. And it's only the Christians will come with that, but they're so hypocritical with what they do anyway. And not that I'm saying this is true what the Bible says, but they believe the Bible's true. Therefore, this is their book. Why are you not adhering to what you... So if your claim is this, your own book refutes your claim. Therefore, please throw your claim away. Anyone else making a claim? No, right. Continue. Told you it's the easiest one to dismiss.
Do you see how certain he is in his sort of simplistic thinking? I think we've shown here that it's not as simple as that. And in fact, you haven't demonstrated that he opposes himself. He's in fact in line with his goals. And so you thinking that this is done. But as you can see, Jordan is not sort of thinking about this. It's just like he's listening and taking this all in. And there's no critical thinking or really any questions to be asked about this or pushback against this at all. So that's why it's smooth sailing for Hamza with somebody here who's not pushing back at all.
Are you sure he's taking it in?
Well, I mean, he's not critiquing it. I'll leave
He's not reacting. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Dismissed. Let's go with liar. Next one is Muhammad had no revelation in the cave. There's no such thing. What he did, he pretended that an angel came to him, and he came and told the people, "Yeah, an angel came to me and told me to do this and told you to stop worshiping idols and we should worship one God." And it's all a lie. Okay. All right. First thing we need to ask: why do people lie? What's their motive? Money and power? Okay, let's look at, first of all, did Muhammad have that motive? Yeah?
Was he high up in the political?
His uncles were the custodians of the Kaaba.
So he could have motive.
No, his uncle.
Jordan thinks he could have motive, even though Hamza is trying to show that, no, he couldn't have had that motive because he was respected, he had plenty of money. Let's rule out all the reasons that he could be a liar. Right? There's one thing that you can't rule out because you're not in his head, you don't know. And that is that he's looking for something else that he doesn't already have. And one of those things is adulation and fame. And people that want that sort of thing can never get enough of it. Doesn't matter how much money they got, how many people love them, how many houses, whatever else, they're always looking for more. They're always looking for something outside of themselves, other people to continue to tell them how wonderful they are. And you're not in his head, and that's the one option that you cannot eliminate. You can try and eliminate other ones, but you can't eliminate that as far as I can tell.
And I have not watched this, but I'm 100% sure that what he's going to come up with now is that Muhammad was actually poor. So he didn't build himself a palace. He didn't, have a lavish environment or anything like that. So this is totally, absolutely silly. If you consider that he had something like 20, 23, 24 wives, each with a house, each with servants and slaves, that he had such a lavish lifestyle. He owned orchards. He owned half of the Arabian Peninsula, and he got anything between 40 and 50% of all the loot that was
he is going to say that, James, before... Oh, sorry, I'm reading the chat there. Stops. He is actually going to say that he had plenty of money. So he's not going to say that he's poor.
Oh, okay, because normally they come up with the opposite.
Yeah.
So uncles were the custodian of Kaaba, meaning his family already had power in Mecca. First thing. Second thing, he was married to the richest woman in Mecca.
There you go.
Yeah. Third, money, and he's already got the potential of status. Third thing. Yeah, I'll come to that. Yeah, and when he was calling to the one God and telling them to stop worshipping these statues, the Quraysh, his uncles, said to his uncle who loved him, who was close to him, who brought him up, said, "Look, go to your nephew, tell him we'll give him his weight in gold, mountain of gold, and any woman he wants to marry and status in the city, just telling people to worship this one God." Yeah, basically. And when they came to him, he responded, "If they were to give the moon, put my moon in the left hand and the sun in my right, I would never give up this call." So he was offered riches, he was offered fame, he was offered whatever he wanted to stop doing this. Now we know, and then we can look at the life of him and what he was known as. He was known as the trusted one, the one who you...
Okay, so this is the next claim on. So they apparently came to him and he said, "No, I'm not going to give up this call," right? Once you have some adulation, once you have some following, and you believe it as well, and you've got money already, well, then obviously then there's what else? People can't really offer you more money. What you're looking for is something that they can't offer you, and that is sort of adulation from people separately, thinking that you are the greatest thing, because they can tell you the greatest, but if other people don't believe it, that's the part that you have to. That's the part that maybe you go with. I mean, we can speculate about this. I just don't think that he can in any way refute us. He's not in the guy's mind.
Yeah, and this was just a comment by Smile, how petty this sometimes was. That there were things missing, and they said, well, the Prophet had it in his hand, so he must be the last one who stole it or something. So it goes, into great detail, and it's quite petty at times.
Rely upon to leave your goods with if you were traveling, and he would take care of it. When you come back, he would steal anything, basically. He was the one who you would go to if you had a dispute amongst you to arbitrate. This is pre-Islam. This is pre-prophethood. So
the question is, where's the documentation for this? Is this Muslims with their own documentation telling us how wonderful he is after the fact, or have we got some corroboration about this external to Muslims? In fact, what would be great if there was actual historical evidence from the people who despised him and said all of this. But even again, that would be their opinion about him, right? That he was supposedly this trusted one. Because, of course, if he's a prophet, you want to have, the highest level possible for this prophet. And so, one of the things is, where are you getting this information from? Where do you get this? What does it actually say? And then you look at what does it say and how accurately is he representing it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Which we will hopefully look at in the Gin and Tonic show. So part of this is to do this review of this video, but to also let you guys know that we're going to look into this a little bit more in the next few shows over this month on the Gin and Tonic. So make sure you subscribe to the Gin and Tonic show. If you go to YouTube and type in JINN, Gin and Tonic, I think I actually have it here. If I just bring it up very quickly, hopefully I've actually got it here in one of my links here. Then I can give you the link, go subscribe to the channel, because we're obviously going to be doing a whole month on this, where you can come and listen in, where we go through it. We're not going to go through the text and so forth here, but if I was Jordan, I'd be asking, okay, so you've said this, where do I find this? Where's the evidence that this is the case? And so that's the thing that I would be asking at this moment in time.
And Rob, you brought this up, and I want to clarify. What we're doing on the Gin and Tonic is not the kind of thing that we're doing here. Because here we're looking at the implementation, at the consequences. What we're doing there is looking at the groundwork, looking at the concepts, looking at the different perspectives that people had on Muhammad itself. So it's a little bit of a different intention with a different kind of approach to the whole thing.
So we have his nature. So the question needs to be asked. He's gone from 40 years of being a truthful man, who everyone trusts.
Can I ask, how do you know what's about Muhammad? Is that through the Quran?
No. This is through the history. Yeah.
Okay. No. This is through the history. What history? Where do you
what
get
did he
this
ask?
from? Okay.
Did you hear what he asked?
Yeah. You mean Jordan, right? Yeah.
Because I couldn't hear what he was asking.
Truthful man, who everyone trusts.
Okay, here we go.
Can I ask, how do you know what's about Muhammad? Is that through the Quran?
No.
How do you know this much about Muhammad? Is it through the Quran? He says, no. Listen.
Oh, this is through the history. Yeah, we have the hadith, which is the sayings and the teachings of the Prophet and the stories and such. So it's not everything.
So it's the hadith and the stories and such, right? It's like a vague thing. No. It's not what you just said, but it's all of these things, which is kind of what it is. But there's nothing substantial. Show me what it says. Let's have a look at this, right? Now,
So
this
it's not
could be
history.
something we could do a debate on with this guy, but would he do this? Probably not. He could bring all his sources and we read them together and see, and we bring the counter sources and see what they say. But so he did ask him a question. That's the first question that kind of Jordan's asking.
Yes.
But more it's an inquiring question, whereas I'd be going, okay, show it to me. You've made these claims, show it to me. So that's the history and all these things, including the hadiths, right? Nothing specific there at all.
Everything like the Quran is not like the Bible, where it tells you what Muhammad did and where he went and what he said and who he spoke to. That's not what the Quran is. The Quran is from Allah. The teachings of Muhammad come through the hadith and through the what his companion said he did. Very similar to the Bible, the New Testament, but the difference being is when we hear something that the Prophet did such and such a thing, we would ask, well, who said that? And this person said that, and this person said that, and this person said that. Okay. Were they reliable? Were they trustworthy? Were they there? Okay. The New Testament, we don't have that. We don't have that chain. We don't know who started it. Yeah. So we can't even verify whether the person telling you that thing is actually telling you the truth. We can't even verify whether they were there. So how, if they
Okay,
weren't, we don't.
this is childish. This is so silly. What he's claiming is that just because we know the name of somebody and we know how many children and how many wives and that the testimony that we read somehow makes this reliable. You cannot verify what somebody said 1,000 years ago. is just a name. All you have is a name and some other details that somebody can fabricate and just simply make up. Just because they're giving you details does not mean there is any level of trustworthiness behind this. These are just claims, and it doesn't matter what else there is. It's quite funny that people are actually convinced that if you have a list of names and with some background, that this somehow is evidence. And I see this again and again. I don't understand how this works.
Yeah, I think also, even if we accepted that not only is it just the names, but that we could verify that this is what the people said, all that tells us, as we've said many times before, is that's what the people believe they heard and saw. It doesn't tell us that what they believe or what they saw or heard is in fact true. But again, have we even got that? Have we got verification that this is what the people actually said, or did somebody else write this down themselves? Let's say that let's be as charitable as we can and go, okay, the actual whichever companion was standing next to Muhammad wrote this down as he did it, and that has been perfectly preserved, that we know this guy wrote exactly these words. Let's say that was the case. That's the best case that they can in reality hope for. That doesn't tell us that it's true, just that he wrote it down and he thought that it was true. That's the best that they've got. I think that's not super impressive to me.
We don't know how to say they were there, and we don't know if they were truthful. How do we know what they're saying is the truth? So we have this system. Okay. So going back. So, and when the Quraysh, when they heard this Quran being recited, they sent their best poets to investigate where's he getting these words from. Because we know this man, he's illiterate. He can't come out with this stuff. Where's he getting it from? Their response was, we know he's not a liar, and we know he's not mad. It's magic. Now imagine this, right? You've sent poets to go and hear this Quran being recited, and the only conclusion they come, it's supernatural.
It's also bullshit.
Go on, Stops.
No, that's bullshit. That's. I don't know why they make this claim again and again and again, and every time we send them different people, and there are so many people. It doesn't matter whether it's Al-Razi, whether it's Al-Mahdi. There are so many people who laughed at this, who laughed at the claims. Now, what we need to appreciate is we only have the Quran like from the 9th, 10th century onwards. So we can't look at anybody from the 7th century the way that Hamza is saying. And the people at the time in the 10th, 11th century, they looked at this book and they said, this is a joke. There's everything is wrong in this. The grammar is pathetic. The language is totally wrong. Stops? And then we can do better than that. Everybody can do better than that.
Okay, but who are these people though, Stops? Because the people who are watching this are going to go, oh, you're just making claims. So who are these people that were very critical of him supposedly doing this wonderful poetry?
They are poets themselves, like Al-Razi. I mean, he's the one who was an adamant critic who said, come on, you're coming with this claim that there is this wonderful book and that we can't match it. And we have sent 1,000 poets and we have matched it 1,000 times because the book is so bad. And then you come to us and say, bring something like it. He was mocking them. And then Al-Mari also came, and he's like really a famous poet because he was also blind. And this sort of sets him apart a little bit. And he said, come on, guys, what is wrong with you? There are people who are... And he was comparing this to the different religions at the time, to the different gods at the time. And he said there are so many different gods. And if you compare the claims there, then you must admit, if the people of all these religions, if you look at all of them, then these people have no intelligence. So you have people who believe all these things which are not intelligence, or you have the people who have intelligence who don't believe this. So these are well-known poets of this era, of this time, who looked at the claims in the Quran and said, no, what the hell are you talking about? Hang on, I think I actually have one of them.
Well, we'll bring it up in gin and tonic, Stops. So let's keep that. So you've heard a couple of names there, Al-Razi and the other one, I don't remember the name off the top of my head. But what we will do is bring up those sources on the gin and tonic, because we're doing a month of looking into Muhammad, etc. So rather than bring it up here, you've heard it now. Come over to the gin and tonic, hopefully this Friday, which will be the 9th of April, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll bring up some of those sources. I mean, if Stops has got one briefly, we could show it. But otherwise, we'll do it on the gin and tonic, where we'll bring these up and show you where these come from and what these people actually said, because this claim is maybe some of the poets said this, and as Stops has pointed out, others were mocking this and going, how can you guys think that this is wonderful, right? But it's portrayed here by Hamza as if everybody just thought this was absolutely amazing. And as we just heard, that's not necessarily the case at all. There were people who were critical of this, but that is unfortunately just left out here by Hamza. So there we go. Yeah, there we go. Go full screen on that. There you go. So Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, you claim that the evidentiary miracle is present and available, namely the Quran. You say, whoever denies it, let him produce a similar one. Indeed, we shall produce 1,000 similar from the works of rhetoricians, eloquent speakers, and valiant poets, which are more appropriately phrased and state the issues more succinctly. They convey the meaning better, and their rhyme prose is in better meter. By God, what you say astonishes us. You are talking about a work which recounts ancient myths and which at the time is full of contradictions and does not contain any useful information or explanation. Then you say produce something like it. So there we have somebody who was highly critical of Muhammad and his supposed wonderful prose and the Quran and so forth. And we'll have some more on the Gin and Tonic show. So again, I think take it with a pinch of salt, because Hamza either hasn't heard about these or isn't mentioning it to Jordan. And so he's making it sound as if everybody was just overwhelmed and was just amazed by how wonderful this illiterate guy was. And the truth is, I think, slightly different, to say the least.
So there was something in those words that was supernatural. Okay. I personally believe we can leave lying at this point, because what we have to understand is this. When he came with this call, he was rejected. He was persecuted. They suffered. The people who followed him suffered. They were exiled in the desert to starve to death. The people were told you can't marry Muslims. People were told you can't sell bread to them. Basically, they tried to starve them in the desert. Now, I ask you, would a man who knows what he's saying is a lie, would give up all his status, give up all his position and power as well, and for a lie? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, well, that's to you, right? You don't know what's in the man's head. And people have done that sort of thing and worse because they have believed or wanted to do so with a greater goal in mind. I agree it's not the most plausible thing, but you just ruling it out, no. And the fact that you said that he was kicked out, I mean, you make it sound as if he was this innocent, just wonderful guy, and everybody was just couldn't take it anymore, that the truth was just overwhelming and they had to get rid of him. Again, I think the truth is slightly different, isn't it? Where he got on these people's nerves in Mecca, kept berating them for not joining his view, and eventually they got sick and tired of this. And luckily, he had, his tribe kept him alive, because eventually he got to the point where these people went, we've had enough of this guy. And so luckily for him, he was exiled and not executed, or unluckily for the world, perhaps, if you look at it in hindsight. So it wasn't as if he was just this wonderful guy that was just, inviting people lovingly to Islam and so forth. No, he was a belligerent guy that kept going on and on at these people until they got sick and tired of him. And luckily he got drove out and not killed, or unluckily, as the case may be.
Okay, so I personally believe I can bin that. Then we can come to mental, crazy, delusional, seeing visions, not there. Well, when we look at what the Quran teaches and what it contains, and then we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the order and structure of everything, and the way that the Quran will fit 21st century man like a glove.
What? Immediately, look at Jordan. It's not reacting here. What the hell do you mean the Quran will fit man like a glove? What is that statement? Can you demonstrate what does fit like a glove mean? What's the criteria for this, and why should I accept this? These are my standard questions that come up automatically now, because I've been thinking about these sort of things for a few years now. But I mean, these, and the problem is they never challenged on this, right? I mean, you're kind of laughing because it is so ridiculous, this claim. But the thing that we got to remember is demonstrate this. Tell us the methodology for this. What does it mean? How do we establish this, and why should I believe that your methodology and this sort of thing is true? Because otherwise we're so used to going, it's nonsense. And he goes, okay, well, you demonstrate why it's nonsense. And they get away with making claims like this and not having to back them up.
If we follow its guidance, it's something that can surpass every age. For me,
this is something I would accept now. A lot of stuff that's mentioned still holds weight now.
Yeah.
Okay, he's even saying it still holds weight now. Okay, Jordan, what is it that still holds weight now that you think is unique to Islam? right? That somebody either before or since that hasn't come up with and didn't require a God, or hasn't said better and more nuanced than the Quran. What is it that you think is so wonderful?
Yeah, completely. Even this thing about marriage age, you know, you must have heard about the early age of Aisha and stuff like that. All right. What's the marriage age in the Quran? There is none.
Thank you. Muslims, you heard it there, right? There is no marriage age in the Quran, which, okay, the rest of us know this, but maybe there's people out there that don't know that there is no actual age given in the Quran. What is given there? When she's mentally and physically ready. What's the criteria? None given. Leave it to people to make up on their own.
But what is there? Mental and physical maturity for marriage. So,
and how do you establish that, Hamza, please? What's the methodology by which we can do that? And does that meet the criteria as we understand it today? Because we understand human anatomy and psychology, sociology better today than we've ever understood in human history. And does it correlate with what we have to say today? Is there even a methodology?
Yeah, there used to be. The father determined.
There you go. I'll just make it up, sucking my thumb. Yeah, that's not how we do it today, thank God. Well, thank goodness, if there were a God. Thank God.
If you applied the Quran back in the day, let's say 12th century England.
Well, I think even 150 years ago. No?
I'm saying 12th century England. Yeah, in 12th century England, in Blighty, in London, you could marry a 6-year-old and consummate marriage when she was 9, because that was a standard. Okay. Now,
really? Where's the evidence of that? I don't know that you can do that. Somebody could look that up. If you're in the chat there, look up 12th century England and tell me if you could marry a 6-year-old. I'll just be interested whether he's making this up. But even if it was true, right? Let's just look it up for the hell of it. But even if it's true, nobody's claiming that people in the 12th century were moral or understood human psychology or maturity of children or whatever the case is. So comparing it to any other country is shooting yourself in the foot. Because what you want to say is, hey, all these other people did it, therefore there's nothing wrong with me doing it. That would only be the case if they were claiming that it came from a God. If it's coming from fallible human beings, we can ignore it. You can't ignore it coming from God. So your analogy, trying to compare it, just shoots yourself in the foot and you don't even realize it.
Because the problem is, even if it is true, today it was corrected. Today we don't use it. Today we don't do this. Today we don't have this view because we have learned. So our level is, a little bit different. The problem is in Islam. Islam has not changed. So there, it still says that you can marry children. It still says that you can have sex as soon as the father decides that it's the right time. This is the problem, and he can't go and say, well, the 12th century England. No, you need to go and look at today, and that is where Islam fails.
But he said it right. Quran fits like a glove even today, right? Those were his words, not ours. Quran fits like a glove.
Yeah, we know about all the mistakes in the Quran. We know all the inconsistencies, the contradictions, and everything in the Quran. Nothing fits the 21st century.
Well, it's his job to show it, right, Stops? Because otherwise we can point out all the problems with it. But his job is to show that it's the case. I ask you, if you're watching this now live or if you're watching this afterwards, post us a comment and tell us whether in fact it is a viable option to marry a 6-year-old. I'm not even talking about consummate. Is it okay to marry a 6-year-old anywhere on earth today? Because if it is, then the Quran fits like a glove. If it isn't, then the Quran does not fit like a glove. Very simple.
I think it's a very easy question.
Claim, right? Out of many.
Yeah, but can you show me how you can go and revive a corpse by slapping it with a piece of steak? And that's it. If you can, then it fits. If you can't, well, then it doesn't. So it's very easy.
I mean, there's a lot of different claims, but we're talking specifically at the moment about this marriageable age thing, and him pointing to other.
This is the easiest. It's the easiest way of testing it.
Yeah, I mean, they'll come up with their own story on that. But we can test any of these claims because you only need one of them to be wrong or not to fit, and then it doesn't fit like a glove, and we then should ignore at least that part of it, if not the entire book.
Yeah.
Now, for me personally, in England, 18 is too young. I personally believe for marriage. They're not mentally ready, especially now because of the X Factor generation and Love Island and all that stuff. They're not.
Okay, so if you think that they're not okay today at 18, then, and the Quran suggests that Muhammad is an example to follow, and he had sex. Well, it doesn't say it there, but in the Hadith, which you do follow, it says that he married at 6. Then tell me again. Seems to me you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're saying that you shouldn't marry at 18 in the UK, but the Quran / Hadith or Muhammad married at 6, and then you're telling us that everything fits like a glove. Do you even remember what you actually said? I don't think so.
They're not ready to be wives and mothers and such. They're kids. I was 18. I was like 18, like 12. Yeah. So the Quran will apply to that. But no, if I go to
The Quran will apply to that? How? Look at Jordan, doesn't say anything. How does the Quran tell you that it's not okay to marry 18-year-olds, which is your quote-unquote personal opinion, Hamza?
Well,
How
he
is
just
it
said
the
it
Quran
doesn't.
fits this? No, he said it does.
No,
Just
he
listen.
said before that there is no age given in the Quran.
Yeah, but listen to what he says here now.
like 12. Yeah. So the Quran will apply to that. But no, if I go to
The Quran will apply to that. What will it
And it
apply to? The
doesn't.
age? How? So what he will say, as you point out, he will say, no, but how it applies is that you have to establish their mental and physical readiness, quote unquote. Well, how do you do that? If it happened for Muhammad, either you're saying that Aisha was unique and nobody should follow that, which many Muslims in the Middle East do, or you're saying that we can do it for everybody, or you're saying nobody should be able to do that. Which is it? And how do we establish that? Just giving me vacuous statements like, hey, yes, you can establish it through her mental or physical well-being. Well, how do you do that? What methodology? Do you just look her up and down? Do you toss a coin? Do you have a look in bright sunlight? Do you look at her when the sun is going down? What's the methodology to establish this? Do you talk to her? Do you get her to write a test? What do you do?
Africa, deepest dark African tribe, and the girls there, once they mature, that's it, they're women and they get married, then the Quran can apply there also. You understand?
So basically, the Quran can apply anywhere whenever somebody subjectively decides that they are ready for marriage. Well, thank you very much. You've given us absolutely nothing. Anybody could do that. I could say that. You could say, we go, hey, you can get married when you're physically and mentally ready. People ask us when. Hey, when you think so. It can apply anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So that in itself, it shows you that this is meant to try.
And who decides whether it goes?
Well, it would be the parents of the child, the girl, obviously. It would be the judge or the qadi who's performing the ceremony.
How are they experts and what is their method for establishing it? Do they say, oh, no, she's not ready? And if they do, on what basis? I mean, they just brush over these things. He never challenges them on this. They just brush over this as if this is like a given. Everybody knows when this is and they're always right. It's astonishing.
That's how can refuse.
Yeah,
They'll have stuff to say, I don't want to get married now. Like, she shouldn't be forced. Yeah.
because I discovered something.
Okay, but children don't know. They will very likely do what their parents tell them, like Aisha did and other children do who are young. They can be convinced by their parents. Their parents will tell them it's a good thing. They trust their parents. Very unlikely they're going to say no.
I didn't even think about it before until recently because of all this Islamophobia stuff. Yeah, this country allows sex with children, permits it. Did you know that? Well, a 16-year-old's a child. An 18-year-old is an adult. So what this country does, it allows you to have sex with a child that they deem is old enough. Well, it's not an adult. All right. If you go to Portugal,
Okay, well, now you have to
Yes.
establish what an adult is, right? And the UK has
No, but-
obviously got a different criteria, which again we can look up if we need to.
What Hamza does, he's misleading people. He doesn't say that you're allowed to have sex with a 16-year-old if your own age is similar. So this is quite weird what he's doing now. I don't know what. It's crazy. This is not the point. And what is his problem at the moment? What is he trying to show now with this discussion? That Muhammad was a great guy for marrying a 6-year-old, or what? Just because in 12th century UK or England it was also a viable option? No, it's wrong today. It was always wrong. And just because somebody did it, 1,000 years ago, doesn't make it any better. It was wrong. So, marrying a 6-year-old child is always going to be wrong. And it doesn't matter why he thinks that he can now argue something, making Muhammad look better. Because he's trying to argue that Muhammad was this great guy. He wasn't a liar, not deluded, not anything. Why is he now going into the morality of Islam, which is the worst topic of them all? I don't understand what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I've just quickly looked it up here as well. The UK, so you are an adult when you reach the age of 18, but when you reach the age of 16, you are of the age of consent. That's the way the UK currently sets it up. But the law still gives extra protection to young people over the age of consent, i.e. 16, but are under 18. It's illegal to show or distribute indecent photographs of a child, to pay for or arrange sexual services of a child, for a person in a position of trust, teachers, care workers, to engage in sexual activity with anyone under the age of 18 who is in their care. So that's currently what the UK says about it. But again, we could dispute that. We could have a conversation about that, see whether we agree, disagree. But again, this pointing out this country or any other country is irrelevant. What he's trying to do, though, is say other people do the same, or he's trying to say, but you're a hypocrite. What he doesn't realize, and you and I have said this many, many times, it's a category error. One is that you've got this omniscient, omnipotent God, apparently, that is telling you what to do. The other is a country based on the best science or best politics or whatever it is, a combination of factors that we are bringing into account to come up with a strategy today. If you asked, the legal profession or indeed the law, if you went to look up the finer details, they'll give you reasons why it's 16 or 18. We can challenge that, but they have a methodology that we can follow. You don't have that in the Quran. You've got some spurious, nebulous thing of when she's mentally and physically ready. And there's no method for this. It's a subjective. I'll assess it whenever I want. And if she's young and she goes along with it, well, then that's good enough, as long as she doesn't argue with it. So, well, that's obviously not a good criteria. Now, the Muslims will say as soon as she menstruates, which again, as we pointed out, you can do when you're very young. Does that mean that she's then ready for marriage because her body's ready for, well, potentially, in inverted commas, supposedly ready for sex, but is it actually? No. But this is the sort of stuff that we get, right? Getting away from the point and trying to point out, you guys are hypocrites for challenging us. You're the one claiming a God. We're not claiming a God. We're claiming the best available evidence, and even that can be challenged even today.
You can have sex with a 14-year-old because they deem their 14 is okay. So what's going on here? You're allowing sex with children here. Yeah? So in Islam, it doesn't work that way.
What? It doesn't work that way. So you're not allowing sex with children. So a 9-year-old then is not a child by your standard because you use a different criteria to establish what's an adult, but then you change your mind and you criticize a country that you're living in because they're using a different standard, but then suddenly they are children.
You can't just have sex with a girl. You can't marry her, mate. I'm not going to marry a girl. You're going to be a wife, which is like, what?
It doesn't make sense to me to have for the country decide at legal age, and then, like you say, in 50 years' time it might change.
Yeah.
And everyone's calling someone else a paedophile.
Well, look, if I said to any Englishman today, sex with a 14-year-old, hey, you're a pedo, well, go to Portugal, mate, it's all right. So who are you to say it's a pedo when you go there it's not? See, morality can't even cross the sea, mate. Can't even cross the English Channel.
I don't believe
How's it
him.
going to cross?
Say again?
I don't believe him. I don't believe this. Because whenever somebody makes a claim like that, every time I look it up, it turns out it's totally different. Because somebody, it was sources who came and said, well, the legal age in Greece is 14. Well, I looked it up, and it turns out that it's the Muslims who are rejecting the legal issues, who are rejecting the limit of 18 and say it should be a lot less, it should be 9 years old. And so they are the ones who are objecting to the legal age for sex being 18. So it's never the case. So if he says that now Portugal is allowing sex with 14-year-olds, I'm sorry, I'm skeptic there. I've never looked it up, but every time I do look it up, if somebody makes a claim, I don't find what they are claiming.
Well, it does say here 14 for Portugal as age of consent. So there are some countries like Portugal, Austria's age of consent. Here's a link I'll post. There's just a quick one for Europe. Where there are different ideas, but that doesn't mean that we have to accept it, right? The fact, again, this is not coming from a God, and so the fact that your God pointing to other human beings and saying, "Hey, well, you guys do X, Y, and Z," is irrelevant because we're not claiming it comes from God, and we can correct ourselves. And how do we correct ourselves? We don't just one day go, "Hey, subjectively, we're going to change the age." There will be reasons. There'll be something that we can point to go, hey, this is why we've decided to do X, Y, and Z. You can't even point to that other than to say some vacuous thing like, well, the Quran says when she's physically and mentally ready, which you don't have any criteria for. Somebody's just making up the idea that they're okay with this at some time. I can imagine a God doing a far better job of giving a precise methodology that we can follow throughout the world. And what do you know? Every time we employ it, we come up with the same answer. But again, I'm just expecting something more from a God than presumably he's either willing or able to give Muslims.
Now, I admit I was wrong here. My skepticism has been shown to be wrong. So the age of consent in Portugal is 14 years. But, and there's a caveat here, it is also illegal to perform sexual acts with a minor between 14 and 16 when taking advantage of their inexperience. So what they are saying, yes, you can be inexperienced as a 14, 15 or 16-year-old. And if I don't know how you're supposed to do that. If you're taking this inexperience and abusing it, then you are guilty of statutory rape. And this is something that I find is handled in Germany very well, because there they're saying, yes, you can have sex with a 14-year-old, but then you cannot be older than 16 yourself. This is exactly the point. You're not taking the inexperience and abusing it, but you yourself are inexperienced. And therefore, you cannot be put into jail if you are 16 having sex with a 14-year-old. The same as if you are 17 having sex with a 16-year-old, it's not illegal. It's only from the age of 18 that you can have sex with anybody that you want. And I think that is a version that actually makes sense. So that if you have sex with somebody who's your own age, you're not abusing them, their inexperience. So I think this is, whether it's the perfect way or whatever, I find it's a viable way of doing it.
Yeah.
Across 1,400 years. Yeah. Now, me personally, going back to the age of Aisha, I don't believe she was 6 or 9, to be honest with you.
Can I ask, why did you bring up the age of Aisha?
He doesn't believe she's 6 or 9.
He doesn't take the
hadith.
hadith. The Sahih hadith, classified as being authentic by Islamic scholars, is, when it doesn't suit him, not the right criteria. When it does suit him, he says, oh, but come on, this is like revelation. These are graded Sahih. He just came and said, we have the perfect criteria. We have the science behind it. We know all the names. We know all the people and their level of reliability. And that is why we classify them as Sahih. And now he has Sahih hadiths who meet all this criteria. And now he says, well, I don't believe that she was 6 when he married her. Well, you know, you need to be consistent. You can't jump around and say, well, now I accept it and now I don't.
Well, maybe he's learned something since then.
In the last 2 minutes, yeah.
Did you assume that it was a misconception for me, or
It's a normal- it's a normal discussion.
I'll explain something to you, Jordan, and I'm a very honest, yeah? I'm talking to you, and I'm also talking to the world, right? And there are people in your position who might have heard this misconception,
I'm one of them. Yeah.
right? Now, you might have reconciled it, but there are people who haven't. So I do twofold things here. Yeah? Do you get me? I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to anyone else who's in your position. Because you wouldn't believe, Jordan, how many people message me, English lads, watching this English geezer in the park, talking religion. Right? You get me? Their mind is like a pop. Because he's talking. If I was like in a dress and a topi on and a miswak in my hand, you'd think, oh, he's just coming Arab. He wants, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
but when you see,
like I said, when I first looked into Islam, you're the first face that came up on my YouTube.
oh, fantastic.
So it was a EF Dawa channel.
Yeah.
It was your stuff. That's how I first started learning. I think the thing that attracted me originally was just to speak to my 6-year-old niece. That's originally what it was.
Yeah.
But then I noticed that you were anyone that had a question for you, you were answering, and I'm aware you're a good debater.
Okay, but this just shows, unfortunately, Jordan's lack of critical thinking. The fact that somebody can answer something, open their mouth and say something, doesn't mean that it's substantial or valid. People, and Stops and I have got a lot of experience with this, and we're not perfect at it, but we notice many Muslims, at least that we speak to, open their mouth and give a response that is so ridiculous or poor or invalid or unsubstantiated that it makes our head spin. So the fact that somebody can answer in a but you see, this just shows, right? And we often say that, well, I often say at least, that Hamza appeals to the gullible. And here Jordan is showing exactly that, right? The fact that he thought that Hamza could answer everything, open his mouth and respond with something, is, for him, is impressive. To me, that's not impressive. What I'm listening for is, can he say something substantial? Can he say something I can look up and confirm? Now, we looked up the 14-year-old age of consent. He didn't, as Stops pointed out, give us perhaps the whole story, but at least part of that is true. How do I know it? Because we went to look it up. I didn't just take it to be the case because he opened his mouth and said something. And that's the thing I'd invite Jordan and other Muslims to do more of, is look things up for yourself. Don't just take it because he sounds confident and he says something every time somebody asks him a question. That's not in and of itself impressive.
Verified.
It shouldn't be impressive. Unfortunately, for some people, it is impressive that somebody can immediately respond with something. He's been doing it, or he had been doing it by that stage, maybe 16 years. I think I heard him at some point saying he's been doing this 18 years. So let's say this was 2 years ago or whatever the case is. Somebody who's been doing this for 16 years will have off-the-cuff responses that they've kind of memorized, and Stops and I will say certain things that we will repeat for each, because it's a short, concise thing that we can say. He will have the same, right? That doesn't mean that everything that we say is the case. You should go and look it up. I'm quite happy for people to do that. But it shouldn't just impress you.
The problem are statements like this. Aisha was mature enough to marry, and this is 1400 years ago. How have you established that? I hear this so often that people say to me, yeah, but Aisha was mature enough. She was ready for it. And she knew exactly what she was doing. That is bullshit. Number one, no 6-year-old is ready to marry a 50-year-old man. No 9-year-old is ready to have sex with a 54-year-old man. That is nonsense. The other thing is, why do you think that Aisha is ready? And this is the other misconception that most Muslims have, because they say, well, she had already started her period. And then I ask them, okay, then please show me this. Show me one single reference. Show me one statement in any Sahih Hadith which establishes this. You will not find it. She did not menstruate yet, the way that it is in the Quran. So according to the Quran, you are allowed to marry, divorce, and remarry someone who has not yet menstruated. Aisha had not menstruated because there is no indication anywhere. People just assert that she was ready because Muhammad said so. So they just follow this. This is exactly what Rob was pointing out now. With Jordan, what he's doing, he's just following this, and he accepts it without questioning it. And Muhammad said she was ready, and Muslims believe it. They do not question it. And this is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, Jane, what do you think this means? She said, I prepared myself for you. This is a child saying, I prepared myself for you. What do you think that means? And whatever you think it means, how do you establish that your understanding of what that means is in fact true? I'll leave that for you to ponder.
Yeah, but remember, this could also be Yal, hey? So be careful.
No one seemed to get one over on you, which was what for me was. It kept me watching and watching.
And that isn't easy here, you know that.
No,
that isn't easy, because you don't know who is going to open their mouth and say what.
My second time Speaker's Corner, and my first time, it was literally everybody was just going for Islam. It was just like everyone against Islam.
No, it is that way. It is that way.
I didn't want to come back, to be honest. I mean, you said you were coming back today, so it was one of the reasons I came.
Oh, you got the people with semblance today.
I mean, the thing is also there is that it can either be a debater who's very good at debating,
no, and I can see you can see Hamza's a good debater.
Yeah, but it could be
Okay, well, Hamza's got off-the-cuff remarks that he can say, he can change his tonality, etc. I don't know, what do you consider a good debater? For me, a good debater is somebody who can say something clearly and concisely, and it's factual. That's the part that I think is a good debater. Somebody
and stay focused.
Rhetorical. And sorry, who? What was that?
And stay focused, not jump around the way that Hamza is.
Stay focused on the topic and make sure that your opponent stays focused. That, for me, are traits of a good debater. Somebody whose rhetoric is good will, in fact, be, quote unquote, good to the gullible masses, but that's not a criteria that I will accept. So what does it mean to be a good? I've given mine. Now I'd ask Jordan, what is your criteria for good debater? And if you give us your criteria, let's see if Hamza or somebody else matches it. Do I agree with that? If I don't, here's why. Right, so we can have the discussion on what it takes to be a good debater. I think a lot of gullible people are impressed by rhetoric, and Jordan himself has said it here himself. It's not that we're saying it for him. He said that he couldn't stop watching. So for him, it's the rhetorical sort of responses, the sort of almost like the acting that's going on here that impresses him with Hamza. But at no point does he say, well, Hamza, you know what? Everything I went to look all this stuff up. Everything you said was true. Not only were you good with responding just off the cuff, but everything you said was true. People never say this. Wonder why, right? Because they're blown away by the rhetorical, quote unquote, prowess of, be it Hamza or, hijab or whoever it is. But I'm interested in the substance, the actual part where there's something supposedly substantial. But that takes time, right? And like you say, you got to focus past the noise, listen for something that's actually worth paying attention to and responding to. Most of it is hot air, and it appeals to the gullible.
Or it could be the strength of the message itself, which actually, for a person's own innate conscience, actually is very appealing. It's attractive.
All you're saying is that if people already agree with you that it's going to be attractive, or if they're prone to take an emotional stance, then they're going to be persuaded. So I don't find that impressive. Why would you? Because then all you're saying is people are impressed by emotion, but then they're not thinking clearly. I'm for critical thinking, and that emotion and critical thinking don't mix very well. Very rarely do I find somebody who can be highly emotional and think critically at the same time. It's very rare.
Because many of the things that you may have seen or heard or whatever, or other people may see.
All the standard ones that I saw was beat your wife.
Yeah.
I saw all those videos.
People are afraid of that subject, beat the wife, age of Aisha, and all this stuff. Yeah. Now me,
and I was worried for my niece. That was why I looked into it. I thought, she's gonna be Muslim. She's gonna be a Muslim guy. She's gonna have no rights.
No.
Yeah.
That's what
The problem-
people like me.
you know-
I wouldn't class myself as a dumb bloke. That's people.
but you know whose fault that is? And I'm sorry, guys.
I would say mine.
No.
I would say.
I'm
I think
be honest.
you've got to look into it yourself.
I blame, sorry guys, the sub-Indian continent. Yeah, because what it no.
He blames the sub-Indian continent for the fact that people think that you can beat your wife and she won't have any rights or anything. Forget about what Islam and the Hadith say. He's going to blame the sub-Indian continent. So if you come from the sub-Indian continent, your man here is blaming you. Well, not your man, but this guy is blaming you. Whether that's bigoted, racist, whatever the case is, I'll leave it for other people. I'm not going to say whether that's the case or not.
I can't.
Imagine we said that about somebody else. Hey, I'm going to blame the, I don't know, deepest, darkest Africans for something or other. Immediately people say you're racist. Or I'm going to blame those slanty-eyed people over in the Far East for X, Y, and Z. It's your fault that people think X, Y, and Z. What the hell would people say about that?
India. All right, so what you got to
Wait, hold on a second.
I'm giving these guys a slap. No, what you got to understand is this, you see. Before the Muslims of Pakistan and Bangladesh and all these places were Muslim, they were Hindus. Yeah. Now, if you look at Hinduism and the way women are treated in that religion, it's despicable. Yeah. The woman was burned on her husband's funeral with his possessions and such. Yeah. It's disgusting, mate. The way women were treated. All right. And I have to admit, from what I've seen, and this is the only way I can reconcile it, when I see how some
There's misogyny in my background in Christianity.
No, agreed. What I mean is this. Whenever I see a subjugated Muslim woman, it always appears for me, my perspective, maybe it's because of where I live, I don't know, it's the sub-Indian continent. I don't see suppressed Somali women.
How many have you spoken to or know? So you're giving us some of your anecdotal evidence about people and you're trying to blame it on the culture that they had prior to Islam. I thought Islam came along to get rid of this. So obviously part of what you're inferring here is that Islam, quote unquote, didn't do a good enough job on some of these people by quoting you on the subcontinent. So obviously Islam, even if people believe this and they've now become Muslims because they had this other prior background, according to you, that was so, terrible, they still are, quote unquote, abusing the women. So how did Islam help? All it did then was help them not being burnt on the fire by your lights. But they still are, quote unquote, doing these bad things, even though they're Muslim.
My missus is Moroccan, yeah?
I wouldn't have to do that one.
I don't see suppressed Moroccan women. I don't see suppressed Algerian women. The only suppressed Turkish women. The only Muslim women I see oppressed is sub-Indian continent.
Yeah, and how much are you looking? Where are you looking? Where are you getting the stats from? Do you see an occasional video? Do you see an occasional news article? And then in your head, you'll correlate, well, that's where the only place it comes from. I'm sure if we went to go look at statistics in other countries, we'd find that's not the case. And oftentimes they're not allowed to report it, as we know, for various reasons. So women will be oppressed in various other countries, but don't have a method to report it and for it to become a statistic that they've had some sort of abuse. Where in Western countries, that's easier to do.
And when I look at the background to it, I can understand where that misogyny might have crept in with the culture. You understand?
Because Hamza, you know what it is?
I'm not generalizing,
but
but
what I'm saying is inherently, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so men have been, in a powerful position economically, physically, and they will use whatever they can at their reach to enable them to maintain that power. And so if it means misrepresenting religion
exactly
to suppress their wife, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now you have to establish that they're misrepresenting religion. You made the claim that they're misrepresenting it. How are they misrepresenting it? What does your religion say and how are they misrepresenting it? And we see
I'm actually amazed that Abbas says anything. I mean, this guy was so badly humiliated by Nawaz, was it Majid Nawaz? And I can't even remember on what, whether it was slavery or something. And he asked him a very straight question, can you condemn that? And Abbas was not able to do that.
Was this on the LBC when he called into the radio show? Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember something vaguely along those lines.
If it means a political situation or just physical brute, unfortunately, mankind looks for things, even if it means misrepresenting them or misinterpreting them, just to feed their own presupposition.
Exactly.
I am the man, I wear the trousers, And if you want to be like that, then yes, you will find things in Islam to misrepresent, misinterpret, ignore some of the sayings of the Prophet.
It's funny though, isn't it? Whenever somebody does something that these guys don't like, they're misrepresenting Islam, and these guys have got the correct interpretation. And when you ask them how it is that other people can do it, they'll give you their subjective opinion. The other guy that's quote unquote by their lights misrepresenting will say they're misrepresenting it, and he will give you his subjective view. And now you have both parties giving you their own views. It's funny how whenever somebody does this, they're always misrepresenting, and these guys have got the correct answer in a book that isn't clear enough to give the one clear answer that nobody can misrepresent.
And what a complete waste of time this is, blah, 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 pathetic. Absolutely, I agree with you. We shouldn't have to do this. But the thing is, what we are trying to do is we're trying to show what is wrong, why it is wrong, and what would be better. That is what we're trying to show. We're trying to show where somebody in Speaker's Corner here, who is a Muslim, who is trying to convince others of something, what kind of mistakes he's making and why it is wrong. Now, if you don't get it, I totally understand it. And yes, you are right. We shouldn't even have to do that, because everybody, including this guy on the left, this Jordan guy, he should be able to immediately ask, listen, there's something wrong here. It's something here smells fishy, but people don't do that. So a lot of people don't have the experience, are not into Islam that much to know which part is right, which part is wrong. And that is the service that we are offering here, that we are showing people based on Islam, these statements are wrong because, and they are wrong because it says this and this, and what would be right is that. So that is what we're trying to do. And I perfectly understand that a lot of Muslims will not even want to understand this because we are being critical. We are looking at this from an objective point of view and not a subjective, mashallah, a wonderful, everything is beautiful point of view. I totally get it. But that is the way that it works, and this is what we're doing here. And if you don't appreciate it, that's cool. A lot of other people do. But thanks for your opinion.
And you're welcome. If you want to come on, we'll give you the link. You can come on and give us your opinion. If you are a Muslim, or if you're in support of Islam and you want to come on and tell us where we're wrong or why you have a different view, you can actually come on here, and we'll do that for the rest of this if you want to. So let us know in the comments.
Ignore some of that and justify your actions. But that's something innate within all human beings. So,
and I would accept that men and women are not equal; they are different.
of course,
What we say is that they're not equal. We know that. They're equitable. So each has their rights.
But modern day England, I'd say, would say equal rights and all that. And I think that's a dangerous path to go down.
I've made this.
Okay, why is that a dangerous path? What the UK and Western countries say is that women have equal rights. What does equitable mean if not equal rights? They have the right to do the same thing as man if they are capable of doing so, and the same for a man. There's things that women do better than men. So we do have some differences, that's true, but they have the same rights. They can drive, they can get married or get divorced on their own. They don't need somebody's permission. They don't need to go to the shop with somebody or whatever else it is. So they have equal rights. You guys don't have this, and you ostensibly don't have this because you're trying to protect the women. How do you protect them? By dressing them up, by keeping them at home or whatever the case is, not allowing them to drive, because other men who can't behave themselves, women need to be kept safe from them. Instead of educating those people to be less caveman-like and more sophisticated and better mannered, you have to, quote unquote, protect the women. No, well, most women who've had this freedom, and thousands and thousands, if not millions of ex-Muslim women, say they would never go back to this. So are they all wrong? Or you guys are right? No.
Made this claim in the past, and it's quite controversial when I say it, and I'm saying this on camera. I believe there wouldn't be so much unemployment if women were all take care of the kids.
no, but also,
There you go. Well, say it's controversial, by today's standard, you'd be metaphorically hung out to dry. Yeah, women should be at home taking care of the kids. That's what this caveman says. And there'd be a lot less problems, according to him. Yes, if you keep them at home, tell them to shut up, behave themselves, don't let them out to drive or anything like that, you'll have less problems. What problems for you? Because you can't handle them and other men can't. So instead of us being able to better handle problems, we want to make it easier by not allowing problems to show up. And the only way we do that, how do we do that? By not giving them the same rights, because we can't deal with it. Yeah, you need to join us in the 21st century.
Because they're taking the men's jobs.
no, but Hamza, in Islam,
I know it's
women
a-
are equal.
And some women can do better jobs than men. So yes, they should be entitled to take men's jobs if they want to do so, or do other things that they want to do. But no, according to you, they should be at home taking care of the kids. Yes, that's controversial. If you want that idea, feel free to find a country that panders to that need. That's not going to happen here at any stage, hopefully, in the rest of the, the history of this country, or the future of this country, rather. So, yeah, take that controversial view somewhere else if you like, or we'll just bury it right here with you.
Cool.
Equitable.
No. Women are equal in terms of value and worth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No, that's different.
No. But however, they are
They have
not the
different
same. They're not the same. So even in the Quran, Allah mentions the man and he mentions the woman in different places of the Quran, but he mentions them exactly the same number of times.
Prove that. Prove that. Go and prove that he does that. All we need to do is find one of those where he doesn't, and your claim is refuted. Go throughout the Quran and find where he says that, and we'll see whether that's the case. And so what if that's the case anyway?
Exactly.
But go ahead and prove it. It's nothing spectacular.
If I say there's a man,
by the Quran.
and there's a man and he's superior to a woman, I have mentioned man and woman exactly the same time, but they're still very different. Now, this is what I hate. This is what I hate about Islam apologists, because this is deceptive. Because Abbas is right, okay? But this is like a snake in the grass, because it is correct that according to Allah, men and women are equal. But that is on a spiritual level, that they are the same in as much as they worship Allah the same way. But everything else on the planet is different. And that's why it says in chapter 2, 228, man is a degree above a woman. And this is why she inherits half, because she can keep everything. The man has to spend it on the family because he is the provider of the family. That's what it says. And this is why a man can marry 4 women and not the other way around, because it's important that the people know who the father is. The mother is okay, but the father needs to be known. That is why this is so important. So everything else that is regarding females and males in the Quran, it is totally male-centric. And what he is doing is he's deceiving us.
Showing that in Allah's sight
They are equal.
But they are they have different roles in society, as you're saying. And
Can I drag it back to the main point?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because we're going right back to madman and craziness and all. I don't know how we were there. So the point here is this about. Oh yeah, I know how we got there actually, because we ruled out he was possessed by a demon, fooled him, and we've ruled out as a liar. We're on madman, innit?
Ruled out Satan.
No, Satan went first. Yeah, so we're on the madman now, and the reason we brought all this stuff up was showing you that the structure of what he brought is not the result of a madness. Yeah, it's too. Dare I say it, perfect. Islam is, not Muslims. Muslims are people. Yeah, do you get me?
Yeah, what is your criteria for perfect? How do we establish that? Thank you very much.
We've just established that it's misogynistic, it is suppressive, it is divisive, it is violent, it's everything that is wrong that can be wrong.
Yeah, well, he said it's perfect. How do you establish what perfect is? What's your methodology for that, and why should we accept it? You come up with your own methodology, which is, hey, it's perfect because the book says so. In other words, if you have a circular argument, I'm going to just ignore you and say you're talking nonsense. Don't waste your time.
Look at this idiot. There is millions of women more in Europe. What's your solution? Oh, yes, that's why are people so stupid, really?
Solution to what?
Oh, this is crazy.
Get me? But Islam, the teachings, like for example, if your niece practices Islam, don't be offended by what I say now, but she could never be a prostitute.
No.
And she could never be a drug addict, and she can never be a gambling addict, she can never be an alcoholic. Do you understand? Yeah. Inshallah, if she practices Islam, she's going to get married, give you nieces and nephews, inshallah.
She's going to do what she's told. Hey, don't give her too much freedom, because it might be that she takes the wrong turn. So instead of allowing her to have her freedom like a man does, then let's make sure she's married and let's sure she follows these things to avoid, quote unquote, any of these bad things. But at the same time, we'll take away all of her freedoms to choose, because, hey, she may take a wrong choice. Hey, that's part of life. I know this might come as a shock to you, but that's what having more freedom means. It means the ability to choose and to make a wrong turn. And even Muslims who've got the Quran and the Hadith, they still make these mistakes all the time anyway. And they still do more and more of that in the Western world anyway. So how is this helping?
But I've obviously, the fact that she may wear a hijab one day originally scared me.
Okay.
Now I'm actually quite happy about it.
Oh,
We'll talk about it later, but
yeah. So going back, so would you agree we can throw madness away?
Yes.
How? Based on what? What argument have you given to throw it away? You talked about madness. How have you shown that madness is to be thrown away? Now we can throw it away, and he just says yes. What argument have you presented that it's not possible for him to be mad? Maybe I missed it in the last 2 minutes or less. I didn't hear anything.
What's left?
And there's also a reason.
No, did that.
There's also a reason about madness is that a madman will see things that he believes to be true because he's mad. He can't differentiate between what is true and what is not true. And the message doesn't last for 14 centuries.
What are you talking about? Messages have lasted. How do you establish that somebody isn't mad? What is your criteria for that? What, that a message won't last? Madman stories have lasted for centuries. How do we know it's not? How do we know that Jesus wasn't a madman? That didn't last a lot longer than Islam. The Christians are convinced he isn't. The Christians are convinced that he rose again. Was he mad then as well? Oh, no, that wasn't really him according to you guys. So your criteria for not being a madman is it wouldn't last. How did you establish that? People are gullible, and they will believe things if it gives them some pragmatic value. People's ability to think critically is not that good. It's a skill that needs to be, learned. And I'm still learning it, and there's people that are way better than me, but it's something that you guys apparently haven't done very well, at least for your own religion.
And spread amongst the most intellectual circles of society today. So, for example, in England, the average qualification of converts is postgraduate educated people. That message, a madman's message, will not appeal to people of knowledge and understanding. They'll reject it.
Okay, but they haven't read the Quran. If they read the Quran, then they wouldn't do this. If they spoke to us and they spoke to you and we had a discussion together, they wouldn't do it. It's likely that they either didn't read or didn't understand it, just like Jordan. He got some ideas from Hamza, didn't read the Quran himself, certainly didn't understand. If I brought him on and we had a conversation, do you think he'd understand the Quran? No chance. Right? So these people they're converting without using critical thinking. That's not necessarily impressive. And people who are postgraduate are just as, fallible or can fall for that as anybody else.
Reject it because they'll recognize.
So we can reject madman, yeah? What's left?
It's accepting, isn't it?
When we eliminate what's impossible, whatever's left, no matter how improbable, has to be the truth.
You haven't eliminated everything that's impossible, though. That's the problem. That's the Hamzian fallacy. So we'll just repeat that again. How have you established there are no other options? His response would be, tell me what other option. No, my friend. You don't shift the goalpost to me. You present an argument that you have given all the possible options other than him being truthful. I don't need to provide you something else. You need to provide an argument that you have covered everything that is possible. The one question
This is actually how easy it is. This is how easy it is.
Yeah. Well, because occasionally you'll see one or two women. I've actually spoken to one or two Muslim women there, but then they've also got the men all standing around protecting them as if they can't speak for themselves. It's kind of a bit of insulting, isn't it? Like these women can't speak, and the men will jump in when they think that the women are, like battling a little bit, right? Then they jump in there.
Can you give an example, Mr. Goldstar? What did Rob exactly? What did he say that was stupid? Can you give us an example?
The truth. So it can only be messenger of God. He is a messenger. Now, unless you don't believe in God, then of course you could rule that out as well. But then we wouldn't start with the second proposition. We start with the first proposition, creator.
Can I ask you? Obviously, you were in the same position as me.
Yes.
And you accepted the creator first.
Yes.
And then you started looking into Islam.
Yes.
When did
what?
come into was it just that?
What's that?
What did he just say? Did he create Earth and then he started on the universe?
No. He said, where did you start? You started with the creator? He said yes. And then he said you started looking into Muhammad, and he said yes.
Okay. Then, Jesus, why does this headset not pick this up?
Yeah, it is quite soft. I can't make it any louder. You'd have to raise it on your end. Stop. It's at maximum volume here, and I can't push it any
maybe that's
higher.
why I've got it too soft.
I don't think I can. Let me just check if there's a way to make this any higher. No, it doesn't allow me to.
No, I can make it louder. It's just that it gets uncomfortable with the high levels.
Did that then?
Well, actually, you fought against Islam first.
2 years, mate. 2 years, mate.
You fought
what said about me, debater, mate? I'm a debater, mate.
He was fighting. He was fighting Islam.
You know why? Because
Muslims.
Islam was going to cost me everything. That's the whole point. Yeah, because I had a girlfriend who didn't want to accept Islam, didn't want to be a Muslim's wife. didn't want my daughter.
Okay, so I mean, it goes to about 30 minutes. We can stop here. We can listen to the rest of his story. We've kind of heard it before. He got converted and so forth. At about at 30 minutes, they kind of finish here where it gets dark. And then he kind of says, thanks very much. He gives Jordan a shake on the hand. The original videos in the description. And then Abbas takes over. And he's like, oh, Abbas, I ended on such a good note. It's like a movie ending. Why did you take over? And then you can't hear them for about a next minute or so because the bus doesn't have a microphone on, so it's like you just can't hear them at all. And then Hamza comes back again towards the end. Then he invites you back, and they have another 5-minute conversation after Hamza said, "Thanks very much."
Okay.
He should have had to come back for a second.
There's nothing substantial.
No, it's more of his story now. So I think that's as far as we can go there. I mean, again, if you want to go watch the whole thing, by all means, go do so. It's in the link in the description here. And then you could watch the rest of it. But it's just really him telling a bit of his story here to Jordan. Stops your takeaways then from this, or your summary?
It's as always, it's a huge disappointment. It's always the same thing, that you get claims and claims and claims, a lot of deception, a lot of red herrings, a lot of this, but there's no consistent message. There's no structure. There's nothing really where you can say, oh, that's interesting. Or there's nothing where you can say, I need to think about this. It just doesn't happen. There's nothing that is intellectually stimulating. There's nothing here that I find compelling or anything. And as soon as you start reading the Quran yourself, as soon as you start looking at the texts in the Hadith, the Sunnah, and all that, then you look at this and you just shake your head and you think, why are these people doing that? Where anyone who has read the Quran and a little bit can already refute them. Anybody with just a cursory, superficial bit of knowledge on Islam can immediately spot the mistakes. And I don't understand why these people do that, really. This is, for me, it's sad. It's really, really sad. What I heard yesterday with a stream, 2 days ago, with, destroying atheism. Guys, you need to step up your game. You need to go and you say, well, what is an atheist? And that is somebody who is the opposite of a theist, who believes that there's a God. Well, an atheist does not. So the only way to do that is to bring evidence for the existence of a God. Now coming up with Muhammad, that he was such a great guy, and therefore because he was such a great guy, we need to believe the message that he brought us without knowing whether this was even the devil or God or something, that is weak. And just this is just appealing to emotions, a special pleading. Just because the guy said something and everybody seems to think that he's such a good guy does not make the message of the Quran any better. It does not show that this God existed. It does not show that the morality that Muhammad displayed is any better than what was common at the time and the region. So I'm totally underwhelmed here.
Yeah, I think the takeaway, to add to what Stops has said, by the way, here is the link to the Gin and Tonic show. So we're going to be going into this in a bit more depth, the claims about Muhammad on the Gin and Tonic show. So if you click on that link and subscribe there, we'll go into that. That's every Friday, 8 p.m. UK time, every single Friday. These sort of reviews are only sort of come up when Stops and I both have time to do that. My thoughts are, that I don't think that he's established that any one of the others are impossible, or in fact that there aren't other options. So he hasn't established the impossibility of the contrary. That's essentially what he's trying to do. He doesn't know that term. But if you could establish the impossibility of the contrary, i.e. that every other option is impossible, then whatever is left, it would be the only option. So that is a valid term. The problem is you've got a very high bar to reach to demonstrate the impossibility of the contrary, unless you have only two options. But by his own logic, he's got more than two options. There are other options. He hasn't even provided the most reasonable option, which is simply that Muhammad was mistaken about all of these sort of things. He likes to use other terms which add extra criteria, which makes it harder for the other interlocutor, because now the other interlocutor is put on the spot. He's got to demonstrate that it's in fact the case. Unfortunately, Jordan didn't do any critical thinking and hardly asked any questions at all here. There's so much that could have been said about these sort of things, and that went by the wayside. But I think, as Jordan pointed out, he's just kind of mesmerized by Hamza's style and approach and so forth. So, he's just not going to think critically about this or ask the tough questions, or indeed didn't know much to ask about it anyway. So for me, I don't think that he's established that any one of the others are impossible. You might argue that some of them are unreasonable to some degree, but even if I took the position that Satan is possible, or that it's some sort of devil or something existed, then he hasn't shown that that's not the case. In fact, if it were, I think that's more likely the case. If there were something supernatural, it's more likely that it was a malevolent entity that spoke to Muhammad and, got him to do all of these sort of things. And that the test is for us to establish that this Quran is not from a supernatural entity, but rather from the musings of a desert dwelling, nomad, business person, conqueror, whatever the case is. And if that's the case, then Stops and I are on our way to heaven. But fear not, I would certainly protest on your behalf and just say, because you were gullible enough to believe this, that doesn't mean you should go to hell. So again, I think the message for me is clear. We've got to ask questions when they make claims, ask them to substantiate the claims, and ask critical questions. It's a skill that needs to be learned. The more we watch, the more we do this, the better we will become, hopefully, at doing this. It's very easy to say, no, you're wrong. The harder thing is to say, hey, demonstrate that claim. You made a claim, demonstrate it. Because as soon as we make a counterclaim, they then say demonstrate it. And that lets them off the hook. We've got to avoid doing that. So all in all, again, this was one that was sent to me by James SC. This was one of the times when Hamza met this guy, and was in particular around these claims of Muhammad. And as I say, we're going to be dealing with it over this month of April. So come and join us on the Gin and Tonic Show.
And what we believe is just anything that we think is worth believing or is correct to believe. If you show me something that I believe that is wrong, I will no longer believe it. Very easy.
Yeah, and also I think that Allah said not to judge others, you can only judge people. Okay, well then say the same to your Muslim brethren. They're judging everybody else for being wrong, for not believing in Islam, especially these guys in particular that we've had on here, right? They are judgmental, they are critical, they are condescending, right? So maybe that message needs to be said to some of your Muslim interlocutors more so than us. On that note, I'd like to thank Stop Spamming, as always, my co-host.
Yep.
You eventually made it, so that's great. Thank you to all the viewers who watched us live, and thank you again if you're watching this as a recording. You've got all the way to the end, and we will definitely be back with another one when both Stops and I have got time. And in fact, I think we have actually got something that we looked at together earlier today that we might do a review on either later this week or hopefully next week.
And if you have a Muslim who disagrees, send him this way.
Yeah, and join us on the Discord channel. There's the link in the that's going across the screen at the bottom there. The link we also posted in there. So come and join us on Discord, and you can speak where it's not being recorded, and you can just have a conversation. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody, and we will see you again soon. Good night.